Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Buckeyes. We've got Steve Hellwagon on the line from 247 Sports. And, of course, don't forget to like the video, comment with any questions or comments that you have, and, of course, subscribe to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Steve, little could be more expected from Urban Meyer's run at Ohio State. It's truly remarkable. But we've had a number of conversations highlighting, unfortunately, those near misses that could have just made it a ridiculous, over-the-top, dominant run, the most dominant run in college football. Probably 2 to 3 wins separated Ohio State from everyone else in the country. They could have made that kind of claim. As it was a great run, winning 91% of his games. Clemson, Alabama, as you mentioned, that was just all we heard during the national championship game and prior to the national championship game. And now after that, those two programs have separated themselves. So Ohio State fans, alumni, those that work there within the athletic department, within the football operation, I got to think that rubs them a certain way, the wrong way, because it's a proud history, tradition, and program that believes it's at the very top rung.
Yeah, it was a great year, and it is obviously one of the top programs in college football. And you think about it, DeBo Sweeney after the game got on there and he said, anybody can do this. And that gives hope and inspiration to a lot of people that hopefully, will have the chance one day to hoist that trophy up and say we're the national champions as well. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for everything they've put in, everything Alabama's put in terms of the hard work, the recruiting, the player development, hiring the right coaches, developing the right systems, building the program both on and off the field to develop the players, both as athletes and as people and as students. It's a multi-layered, multifaceted thing. And yet I will disagree with Sweeney on one thing. I don't believe anybody can do that. I think that there are only probably 15 schools in the country that are investing in facilities, in coaches, in technology, in support staff, in everything else that you need. And I always say this as a joke, and I mean no harm, but Indiana ain't winning that. And, that's just the fact of the matter. And I don't mean to pick on them. It could be, you could say Wake Forest ain't winning that, or you could say, Arizona ain't winning that, or whoever. They're just not. It's the schools at the top of the rung that invest the money, the time, the people, the facilities, the money, the scholarships, and everything else across the board to make it. And it's support. It's having the state-of-the-art workout facilities. It's having all of the advantages that you could possibly build into a college football program. There's only 15 places in the country that have them. Ohio State's obviously one of them that does. We referenced earlier, Alabama and Clemson are on a plane that's right here, but I think Ohio State, Georgia, maybe LSU, a couple others are right there at that next spot. My mind kind of running, it's hard to say. USC probably has all the advantages you would need. It's just you got to recruit at such a high level to expect to compete at this top level. Ohio State's got those guys. There's no excuses. 13-1, great year. One of the best years that Ohio State didn't win a national championship in school history. Probably one of the top 10 or 11 seasons in OSU football history. And yet, the goal is to do so much more, to get in the playoff, to win the semifinals, and get into the championship game, and ultimately to win the championship. So there's more levels and layers out there for Ryan Day to aspire to. He understands it completely. He knows all about it. He knows where he's at. And in a lot of ways, he's a Chip Kelly disciple. Chip Kelly trying to rebuild UCLA. Ryan Day, in some regards, is going to start this job out on third base with all the built-in advantages that he has at Ohio State, the great recruiting that Urban Meyer did, and everything else. And we're going to see, given the keys to this castle, this kingdom, what Ryan Day is going to come back with. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, even take a place like Iowa, Nebraska, despite as much as they put into football, their proud traditions, how many NFL players they produce, that they've got two of the top coaches in the country at those two institutions, just based on where they're located. It's extremely difficult for them to win at that level. Maybe Nebraska, because of the tradition and reaching into Texas and California, could pull it off, but that's a difficult task even for schools that have ascended to that level, and we see routinely in the top 25, not Nebraska in recent years, but you know where I'm headed with that. Got Steve Hellwagon on the line from 247 Sports. Join him there at Bucknuts for the best in Ohio State football coverage. It's fascinating to consider, and we could go through the accolades for Urban Meyer, that his worst season at Ohio State was actually a playoff season. If you take his worst record at Ohio State, it was 11-2, and they actually made the playoffs that year.
Yeah, kind of crazy. Lost that season to Penn State midseason, and Penn State won the Big Ten championship, but Penn State was not selected. They had 2 losses. Ohio State had 1, and Ohio State got selected to play in the playoffs. So, the politics of the playoff, I think, very interesting. That you can have a great team and not make it. Ohio State had a better team in 2015 with Bosa and Elliott than they did in 2016 without those guys, and they didn't make it. So just 1 loss in 2015 as well. One loss in 2013 in the Big Ten championship game and didn't make it. So, it is just kind of the rub of the green. I think in each year, you never know what the scenario is going to be. You could write 5 different scenarios for the 5 different years of this playoff. And I think by and large, when we talked, back in early December, I probably agreed with the committee that it wasn't Ohio State. And I even made the joke that one of my best friends said the committee, they didn't say it, but they could just say, well, we watched their games of this season. They're not one of the top 4 teams. But, ultimately it is what it is. Tough decisions have to be made. I think the best thing you can do is win the games that you should win and look good. Obviously, there's some eye test involved with this. In Ohio State, that's going to come back in their favor one of these years. I don't look at it that there's some systemic bias against Ohio State. I think what happened with Notre Dame is going to be potentially held against them for the next year or two until they prove that we truly do have one of the top 3 or 4 teams in a given year. So at any rate, again, it's kind of the vagaries of each season define themselves. All the clamor that we had, I'm very active on Twitter, and we all give our 2 cents on 8-team this, and we should do it this way, and home sites and all this other stuff. And I think everybody's got the best interest of college football in mind, but until they find a partner that is willing to write the check to televise 4 more quarterfinal games, until they get bids on that, it's kind of premature to say, that'd be when we start hearing that they've formed a feasibility committee to feel out Fox and ESPN or whoever, CBS, to see if there should be another. I would assume ESPN would have the first right of refusal built into the contract that they already have with the committee and with college football. Until we hear that those talks have kind of began informal to price it out, it's not going anywhere. And the commissioners came back this year and said that it's really not as close to 8 teams just yet as you all may think it should be or will be. So I think we're stuck with 4 is kind of the idea I get until somebody really gets riffed on this thing in the next year or 2, and then maybe it'll get revisited again. But I think 4 is where it's at, and I don't really have a big problem with it. And I'm interested to see again, what can I predict Ohio State will be in that 4 this coming year? I look at their schedule, game at Nebraska, a team that's on the rise, Could that be their Iowa or Purdue this year? And then, of course, at Michigan at the end of the year. Michigan's going to rise up and beat Ohio State one of these years, whether it's next year, the year after that. At some time in the next 5 or 10 years, it's going to happen. I can't tell you when, but it wouldn't surprise or shock me if things kind of go sideways for Ohio State next year. They have some injuries to key people or whatever. Perhaps that's when it is. But there are some people in their top 10s that have Michigan ahead of Ohio State, which is kind of crazy. But again, we'll get into it in 2019 and see what it looks like. But again, I think this is a year that Ohio State fans can be proud of their team. They overcame a lot to be 13-1. Dysfunctional beginning to the season with Urban Meyer not being there. Dysfunctional defense all season. Great offense, best offense probably in school history, and certainly a career year for Ohio State at the quarterback position. Big Ten, the best year any quarterback's ever had with Dwayne Haskins. So I think enjoy the memories and kind of revel in the fact that they survived all that adversity and really had a great year.
5 years of the playoff, it intrigues me that Ohio State's been on the fence every year. Number 4, number 5, number 4, number 5, number 6, although 12-1 and a conference champion, they were obviously that close to making it.
They were 5A this year, 5B, because that didn't hold any water for me, Mark.
Sure.
I said that week is like, and somebody on our message board said, okay, you've got 2 losses, Georgia, to the best 2 teams you played. Maybe you're not one of the top 4 teams in the country. If you've lost, 2 games to Alabama and whatever it was, maybe you're not up there, but whatever.